So that is the long story of why I've gained 100 pounds. I would say the short story is I didn't make myself a priority and I did not care for myself the way that I should. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, 100 Pounds of Gratitude. I'm Rachel and I am striving to gain gratitude, lose weight, and build a life that I love. And today I thought I would do something a little bit different and I would reflect on how I got to the point where I needed to lose 100 pounds. So I just want to share a little bit of my weight gain story with y'all. But recently I was thinking about how did I get to this point where I couldn't see that I had gained so much weight. I just didn't see it or feel it. How did that happen? And so I took some time to reflect kind of on the last 10 years where my weight just spiraled out of control and how I got to this point where I'm 100 pounds over my suggested BMI for my height. 10 years ago, I didn't have any children and I was teaching school and I really wanted to be a mother. And it was about this time of year and I experienced my second miscarriage. And it was one of the most physically and emotionally painful experiences that I've ever gone through in my whole life, even to this point in time in my life. And it was really difficult because I didn't always know what I wanted to do with my life, but ever since I was a really young girl, I knew I wanted to be a mother. And so after I went through the second miscarriage, it made me realize that dream of becoming a mother may not happen for me, and that was really painful. And then just experiencing this loss was really painful. I talked to my doctor, and my doctor at the time said normally we wait until a woman has had 3 consecutive miscarriages before we recommend that they go see a fertility specialist. But I did not want to wait to that point. So I looked up and I found a doctor in a city nearby where we were living at the time. And I called that office, but the next available appointment was not for another 2.5 months. And I didn't care. That felt like forever, but I took the appointment. And of course, our insurance didn't cover it. The insurance we had at the time wouldn't cover any type of fertility specialist. But we didn't care. We wanted to know what was wrong and if there was some kind of medical way of dealing with it and fixing the problem. My husband and I wanted to get down to the bottom of it and figure out how we could grow our family. So during the course of that 2.5 months, I actually got pregnant again. About 3 weeks after my miscarriage, I got pregnant again. We were only a week out from my appointment and we thought, okay, we're going to get the help we need to make sure that this is a successful pregnancy. So we go into the appointment and the first thing the doctor says to me is, you need to lose weight. And the second thing is, why didn't you wait to get pregnant until after you saw me and we ran these tests? So that was a little bit jarring to be greeted like that, but we sat down and spoke with her and they ran all the tests and they did all the blood work, and she said, I think the thing that we want to do first is to give you progesterone injections. And so we were like, sure, we'll do whatever, just tell us what to do, we will do it. So we started doing progesterone injections every single day. My husband would give them to me each night. And they were painful, but honestly, I wanted to have a child so badly, I wasn't really concerned with the physical pain. I was willing to do whatever. Well, after a week of these injections, I developed an allergic reaction to them, and we had to go through the process of figuring out a different way of delivering the progesterone to me. So we got that straightened out, and I started on the new prescription of the progesterone injections. So we continued doing that, and then we hit around somewhere between 8 and 10 weeks, and we went to go have an ultrasound, and we heard the baby's heartbeat. And we were super excited, and the doctor would actually push on my stomach, and you could see the little teeny tiny baby pinging around in the ultrasound. And I think I have that ultrasound DVD somewhere. I need to find it, but you could see this teeny tiny thing pinging around. That moment is ingrained in my memory and made it so clear how at such a young age there's life in there moving around. It was just an incredible moment for my husband and I. So we left the appointment. We were super excited. We thought, yes, this is going to work out. We've heard the baby's heartbeat. We've seen him moving around. But about 2 weeks later, we went in for another ultrasound. Because I was a high-risk pregnancy, we went in often for ultrasounds. And at this appointment, the baby's nuchal fold was measuring too large. So our fertility specialist sent us to a genetic counselor. And once we saw the genetic counselor, he informed us there was a good chance that our baby was going to have a genetic abnormality, which could range from not living outside of the womb, not making it through the pregnancy, or dying right after birth, or living life with a genetic abnormality ranging from minor to severe. At that appointment, it was just kind of a devastating moment for me. We'd already experienced 2 prior losses, and it was all such quick turnaround between. And then to go from like, yay, everything is okay, to now all of a sudden it's not okay. And here's all the things that it could be. And then on top of that, the doctor has to walk you through your options, which included termination. And the decision to terminate a pregnancy was something that I never thought that I would have to entertain the thought of. I wish that I could say that as soon as the doctor said that, I was like, no way, I would never terminate a child. I would never end a pregnancy. But I was not able to do that. I was so emotionally distraught, and it took me a second to take all the information in and to process it. And it was an extremely stressful time for my husband and I. We also had a lot of outside opinions weighing in on what we should do. Should we keep the baby? Should we terminate the pregnancy? And everything in between. And honestly, looking back, I think it would have been easier for us just to have sat down, the 2 of us, and thought it through and made the decision and not included so many outsiders. But, hindsight is 20/20. But in the end, after we got past the initial shock of what we were up against, my husband and I had a conversation, and he made it very clear that no matter what, my husband wanted to have this baby. He would love this baby no matter what. And together we could face whatever challenges that lie ahead for us. And that our faith in God is what would sustain us through this challenging time in our lives. And we knew that He had purpose for us, and He had purpose for this child. And every child and every life is fearfully and wonderfully made, whether it lasts for a very short time or a long time. It was not our decision to choose termination or not. So we just decided to stay the course and trust God in blind faith. That if we have trials, we have trials, but we were going to follow where we thought God was leading us. And that was to not terminate this pregnancy. So during all of this, I started bleeding. At the time, I didn't realize that that's a sign that I was going to start miscarrying, because I thought, well, we're still having the baby. We can still hear the heartbeat. But clearly that wasn't a good sign. We went into the doctor, and it turned out I had a large hematoma inside my uterus, and so I was having this bleeding, and that increased my chance of miscarriage. We kept on going forward with the pregnancy, and at 17 weeks, we decided to do an amniocentesis, and that will increase your chance of having a miscarriage between 1% and 3%, but because I was having this extra bleeding, it increased my chances to 25%. But at that time, mentally and emotionally, we decided that we needed to know what we were going to be facing if our child needed special accommodations once they were born. We wanted to be prepared for those things. So we went through with the amnio, and when we got the results back, we were so excited because everything came back perfectly fine. They didn't find anything. And we also found out that we were having a boy, which we didn't care if we were having a boy or a girl. We were just excited that everything was healthy and fine. I was still bleeding at the time, and I continued to bleed for another 3 weeks. All in all, I ended up bleeding for about 11 weeks straight. So I was anemic, and I think I was just emotionally tired and physically tired and still working part-time. And it was just a lot happening all at one time. And I wasn't listening to my body and what I needed physically, emotionally, any of those things. And so in the evenings, we developed a bad habit of getting gas station treats. So late at night, or for us late at night because we were working, so 10 or 11 o'clock at night, we lived in a small town, everything would be shut 9, 10 o'clock, and my husband and I would just go up to the gas station down the street, and I would always get the yellow zingers with the icing on the top, and my husband would get the orange Hostess cupcakes, and it would be our late night comfort snack in the midst of all of this tumultuous time in our lives. You can see that that was probably not the best idea for building healthy habits. But healthy habits were not like our main priority in this time. We really wanted our baby to live. And we were going to do everything we could. And we were putting all of our focus and energy on this. So from weeks 21 to 32, we went in every week. We had an ultrasound. And during that time, every time we went in, they were looking at, oh, we think you might have brain damage. Oh, we think you might have heart damage. Oh, we think you might have kidney damage. And every time we went in, there was another organ that they thought, oh, something's wrong here, something's wrong there. Till we finally got to week 32, and the doctor came in. He did the full body anatomy screening on our child, and he turned to me and he said, you have a miracle boy. We cannot find anything wrong with him. Everything looks healthy. And it was just such a relief for us. That felt like the first time the first time we heard his heartbeat. We did not have good news again until that 32-week screening. And we were just so relieved and so happy that everything looked good. At 40 weeks, we had my son. I ended up having a C-section because he was breech. He was born. They whisked him away from us. And at the time, with this being our first son, we didn't think anything of it. But it turns out he was born with a large bump on his head. And so we did go through the process of checking that out, and we had to go to specialists for that. But in the end, it turned out it was just a cyst, and it was nothing serious. And as he's gotten older, it's gotten smaller and smaller. Every day in that pregnancy, I prayed that our son would be a fighter. And God is so good to answer those prayers because our son is a fighter. And his name means God is gracious. And it's only by God's grace that our son was born and he's healthy. And I'm so thankful that, yes, I love science and I'm so grateful for science. But science is not always right. Science was not on our side. It was saying the odds were against us that our child would survive. The odds were against us that our child would survive and be healthy. And both of those things happened. So sometimes it doesn't always make sense how God is leading us. But when we follow him blindly in faith, he illuminates the next step and the next step and the next step. And that is where we know no matter what happens or no matter what challenges are in our path, we know that we are under the umbrella of God's blessing and we will be able to face those challenges. But once my son was born and we moved on into the newborn phase, we had more challenges, just all the things that come with having a newborn. And during that time, I did not take a moment to address some of the emotional issues that I had been going through. And listen to my body and listen to some of the things that I needed physically and emotionally and tend to those things and heal those things. I just kept going on to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And my husband and I didn't have an extra support system like I mentioned before. So it's just the two of us caring for our child day after day, night after night. And it was a very exhausting time, like any parents of a newborn. But I think because I had not addressed that emotional stress ahead of time, I was in constant fear that something was going to happen to my child. I was constantly worried. I didn't want to leave him in a nursery. I did not want to leave him with somebody that I didn't know very well, a babysitter that I didn't know very well. I was constantly worried that something was going to happen to him. And I think it was because I had experienced those other two losses and because the pregnancy was so stressful. I think that is what also contributed to me to continue gaining weight and not caring for my emotional health and my mental health and my physical health. A year passed, we were delighted to have our first son, and I got pregnant again. And we were cautiously optimistic. We went to my doctor. We knew we needed to get on progesterone, so they prescribed oral progesterone this time, and I started taking that. But then my pregnancy hormones were not increasing the way they should. So we went to a progesterone vaginal suppository and we tried that for a little while. And at 9 weeks, we went to the doctor and we heard the heartbeat. So we were super excited. We thought, yes, we made it past the threshold. We know that there's a heartbeat. Everything is going to be okay. But about a week later, I started bleeding. And at this point in time, I didn't realize that was a really bad sign because I bled for so much with my first son and it worked out. But that was a really bad sign. And then at 11 and a half weeks, I miscarried this baby. And that was a really, really hard miscarriage for me because we heard the heartbeat and we thought everything was going to be okay. We thought we were past the we thought we were past the danger zone, and we thought, yes, we heard the heartbeat, we can move forward, and this pregnancy is going to make it. I went ahead and did a D&C surgery. I just knew I could not face another miscarriage at home with the physicality of it all and the emotional stress of it all. And as the doctor came out to talk to me before we went into surgery, I remember I was sobbing, and I asked him, "Are you sure there's no heartbeat? Are you really, really sure?" And he said, "Yes, I am sure." So I had the D&C, and we went ahead and had genetic testing done on that tissue, and it came back all fine, that there was no genetic abnormalities at all. So we didn't know why I was still having these miscarriages, and we found out that that baby was a girl. After the D&C, we were told to wait 6 months before getting pregnant again. And during this time, I wish I could say I used it to heal emotionally and physically and mentally, but I did not. I think I was so consumed with fear and allowing fear to have so much control over my life, telling me the lies, and I was believing those lies of, I am not going to have any more children, this is going to be it for me, and kind of bemoaning those things instead of just trusting God and trusting the process. I was kind of in this dark space. So that 6 month time was not a fruitful time for me like it could have been. But once it was up, I did get pregnant pretty much right away. And we went straight to the doctor. We got the progesterone injections, and I went through that again. This time I had to use a different injection because I developed another allergic reaction to the second type of oil now. And so I went through with my progesterone injections for that entire first trimester. And my pregnancy from there on out, other than being a high-risk pregnancy and having to do all the extra appointments and whatnot, seemed pretty seamless compared to my first pregnancy. And at 39 and a half weeks, my second son was born, perfectly healthy, and we were just elated and so thankful. And for this son, I prayed every day that he would be a giver of rest. God is so good to answer those prayers, and he was a more restful baby for us, and we just needed that rest. A year later, we just didn't feel like our family was finished, and so we wanted to try to have another baby. I got pregnant for a 6th time, and we knew to do the injections, so we went in and we got our injections, and I was able to do those injections for about 8 weeks, and then my body just couldn't do those anymore. We had kind of exhausted all the options, and so I had to stop the progesterone injections and go on the oral progesterone for the last couple of weeks for my first trimester. Really, you do that into about 14 weeks. And that was a really nerve-wracking time because we knew that when I had done the oral progesterone, it didn't work out well. But thankfully, it did work out. And this was also a high-risk pregnancy, so I did all the hoop jumping like I had done before. And I got to my 37-week appointment, and I went into the doctor just for a routine appointment, and he very calmly said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to send you across to the hospital, and I just want to have the baby's heart rate monitored for a minute." And he didn't seem worked up or anything like that, and I had already, with this being a high-risk pregnancy, I was used to doing all kinds of crazy tests. So I went across to the hospital, and I was a little bit irritated because it was 3 days before Christmas, and I had this long list of things that I wanted to get done after this appointment, and now it was going to postpone it by another hour by having to do this hospital test. So I was sitting there, and they strap you in, and they're monitoring the baby's heart rate, and I was reading my book and thinking about all the things I needed to get done. And the doctor came in and said, "Hey, I think you need to have this baby today. I think you need to have an emergency C-section today. The baby's heartbeat is erratic, and we think he is in distress." And I thought, I don't want to have the baby yet. He's 37 weeks. I want him to go as long as possible, give him as much time as he needs. And this doctor was like, "No, I don't think that would be a wise decision." So I called my husband. I said, "You need to get up to the hospital. We have 2 hours, and then I'm going to have a C-section. And I need you to find somebody to watch the kids." We didn't have any family in the area at the time. He asked a neighbor who thankfully accepted the task of watching our 2 sons, who were only 4 and 2, and our 2-year-old was in the middle of being potty trained. My husband rushed up. I had the C-section. The anesthesia was so strong for that one that I got incredibly sick, and I don't remember anything until the next morning when I woke up and was like, "Where am I? Where's the baby? Is the baby okay? Who fed the baby?" And my husband said, "Everything's okay. You're okay. The baby's healthy. I fed the baby." So that was a crazy experience. I I was in the hospital for 2 days, and on Christmas Eve, our sons came up and we celebrated Christmas Eve in the hospital. And then the next morning was Christmas morning, and they gave me the go-ahead to be released from the hospital. And right as I was about to be released, they said, well, your blood pressure is looking a little high, but this is the first time it's been high, so I think you're fine. You can go ahead and go. So I got home, we had Christmas lunch together as a family, and I picked up my plate to take it to the kitchen, and I felt something wet on my abdomen. And when I put my hand down, I realized that I was bleeding. So I rolled my pajama pants down a little, and my C-section incision had opened. And it was one of the most horrifying moments in my life, and I think in the life of my husband and our family friend who was there with us. And her eyes got huge, and thankfully my husband had the wherewithal to grab a towel and put pressure on my abdomen to get the bleeding under control. And he rushed me to the ER, and they got the bleeding under control, and then they stapled my incision shut, but they told us that there was a good chance that it could become infected since it has opened. I followed all the instructions for keeping it dry and not showering the area. I go to my doctor the following week. They said everything looks good, but you can't really see it because you have the steri strips across the incision, but they said it looks fine. Stay as you are. Well, in the meantime, I just felt less and less like myself and more out of it. And my mom, who didn't live in the same town as me but just thought this is not right, looked up a wound care doctor and made me an appointment to go to wound care. And I'm so glad she did, because that afternoon I went in to see my doctor, and there was a substitute nurse there that day, and that nurse came into the room. She said that she could smell that my incision was infected before she even looked at it. She said, you need to get to wound care. And when the nurse came into wound care and she took a look at it, and her face and her eyes got large, and she stayed very calm, and she said, I'll be right back. And she left the room, and she came back in with another nurse, and I knew, okay, this is not good. I didn't look at it because I knew it would kind of upset me. They worked together to get it cleaned out, and the doctor came in, and he had to reopen the incision all the way open, clean out the infection as much as possible, and then I started my wound care treatments for the next 3 months. And so this was an open wound that they would pack, and then they would dress it, and then I would come in and they would change the dressing. And eventually we got to the point where they said, okay, I think your husband would be able to do this for you so you won't have to come in all the time. Because at the time it was hard because I had a newborn, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old. It was just my husband and myself, and I wasn't able to drive, and he was running out of time off from work. And so it was just all of the things. And we went in for him to get trained on how to change and dress my wound. They took the dressing off, and that was it for him. He has done all of the gross medical stuff, but that was too much. He almost passed out. They said, you know what, it's okay. Let's wait until we get a little further along, and then you can take over. So we just kept going in and having it changed at the place. And we made it through those 3 months. During that time, I wasn't concerned about my health on a holistic level. I was concerned about surviving, like literally surviving. I wanted to heal, not have an infection inside of my body, not becoming septic, and making sure that my wound healed all the way across. And during this time, I wasn't able to hold the baby. I wasn't able to nurse him. I was having to pump. I was trying to pump as much as I could. And in a way, I kind of think that there are things I could have done to kind of tend to myself a little bit more and just let myself heal and take the pressure off myself of needing to care for everyone at that moment in my life. But I couldn't see it at the time. I could just see that I was a mother, and I had these 3 young children who needed me, and I needed to care for them, even if that meant to my own physical detriment. And I do not think that is true. I think there are times as mothers where we have to stop and say, this is my limit, and I need to care for myself. And I know there's things out there that say, no, you need to pour from an empty cup or whatever else. And I do not believe that to be true. Yes, we have times where we need to serve because it's the right thing to do and we don't feel like it. And we serve our children in love because that is what we're called to do as mothers. And I think there are other times when we have to say, no, I want to serve my children, but I cannot until I take a little bit of time to heal myself physically or mentally or emotionally. And when I do that, I will be able to serve my family even more. And I think that's true with caretakers in general. So this was a time when I wish I had given myself some grace to do that, but I just didn't. I wasn't able to drive, and I was dependent upon my mom to come help me with my children, which I'm thankful she was willing to do that. And I was dependent on my husband pretty much for anything physical, helping me shower, wash my hair, stand up. It was just a very challenging time. After I had my third son, I lost about 15 pounds, of course. After you go through labor and delivery, you lose weight. But 3 months later, I'd gained up to my highest weight of 265, just from basically being sedentary and focusing on healing that wound. I was so relieved when I was able to walk again, and I was released from wound care, and they told me just to be careful with that scarred area. But I was so relieved. I'm just so happy to regain some of the regular things in life, like showering all by yourself. I just didn't realize the physical shape I was in until I saw this picture of me playing in the backyard with my sons. And I've shown y'all this picture before, but this was my first picture of, wow, that's me. Oh my goodness, how did this happen? And at the time, I couldn't reflect on everything that I'd been through in a very rational way and say, goodness, this has been quite the road to motherhood, and your body has been through a tremendous amount, and emotionally you have been through a tremendous amount, and you have not allowed yourself to process through the loss that you've experienced and just all the transformation that your body has experienced. I didn't allow myself to accept that. I just saw this picture of myself and was basically disgusted that I had let myself get to this point. And I wanted to make rapid changes so I could get out of that as soon as possible. So in 2018, I decided I needed to lose weight, and I just started doing lots of different fad diets. Every month it felt like I was trying something new because I wanted this weight off as soon as possible. So in the next year and a half, I lost 40 pounds, and it was very much like up, down, up, down, up, down. And then we went through another big change. My husband and I agreed that he would change careers. He would go back to grad school. To be honest, this was another walk in blind faith moment for us. We had no idea what he was going to do after he got this graduate degree. We had a lot of outside opinions where people are asking us, why are you doing this? What are you going to do with this? And we didn't have a lot of support in this decision. But again, this was another decision that we prayed about, and we believed this is where God was leading us, and we didn't know what the end result would be, but we walked in blind faith, and God really has blessed that. And 2 years after that, my husband completely changed careers, and we moved from Texas to Phoenix. And God has just provided for our family during this time, and He has led us during this time. And it hasn't been easy, but it was the right choice for us. Once we moved to Arizona, 3 weeks later, the world basically shut down, and we didn't know anybody here. We were not involved in anything. Everybody was keeping to themselves, of course, so we didn't have any type of community. And I think just the stress of and the unknown and the major life change of moving, and my husband doing a new job, and then we started doing homeschooling because the school shut down, and all of this change just sent me to food. And I see that I use that as my source of comfort instead of seeking God and relying on Him as a source of comfort and a guide for my life. I went to food and comforted myself with food and coped with cookie dough. Every week we got a bucket of cookie dough, and in 5 months I gained 20 pounds. Then at the end of August, we decided to go on a family vacation, and we did some hiking. And during that hike, I was having trouble keeping up with my children and my husband, and my knee was just killing me, and I was having trouble walking. And you would think that those things would have clued me in that you need to stop and take care of your body. You're mistreating your body. But it did not. It was not until I saw this picture of myself from this trip that my eyes were open to just how far I had let my health spin out of control. So at first, when I realized that, I was angry with myself. I felt a wide range of emotion. And I would say depressed and a little hopeless, but I took some time to process through what to do next. I realized I needed a community, and I needed accountability, and I needed to be in a community that recognized that this is so much more than calories in, calories out. So that's when I turned to social media, and really it's been a blessing for me. And my 30s were a bit of a beatdown. This decade was rough. and I'm approaching my 40th birthday at the end of this year, and I just want this decade to be a redeeming decade. And I think that reflecting back on the last 10 years is going to help me accomplish that. I've approached this weight loss journey over the last 6 months with a completely different mindset. I recognized, one, that I need to be grateful for this body that God has given me. It is the temple of God, and as believers, we have the Holy Spirit dwelling within us. And in order to live into our purpose while we're here on earth, we have to care for our bodies. And it's not about vanity. It is about quality of life and being able to move and function and serve and give and follow God as He leads you through the next step and the next. And then my secondary thing was I needed to create a lifestyle that was sustainable for me. It needed to be realistic goals. I do not do well with major life changes, that those can throw me for a loop and create major stress and anxiety in my life. I need to figure out some coping strategies ahead of time so that I don't go to food to manage those emotions and that stress. When I've experienced emotional stress or trauma or physical stress and trauma, I need to stop and give myself a breath and find support and ask for help and accept the help and give myself time and space to heal and to feel the way I feel without judgment. Thirdly, I've learned that I need to be consistent and committed to whatever plans without a deadline looming over my head. If it takes me a year to lose this weight or 2 years to lose this weight, that is perfectly fine, because my ultimate goal is to have a wonderful quality of life so that I can follow God and trust Him and serve Him and live out my purpose. And you can't do that if your body is broken down. And then lastly, in order to make my 40s a redeeming decade, that means incorporating spiritual disciplines into my life so that my eyes are open, my body is ready, and my spirit is willing to do whatever tasks He has set before me in this lifetime. So that is the long story of why I've gained 100 pounds. The short story is I didn't make myself a priority and I did not care for myself the way that I should. So if you are going through a time of struggle, and definitely if you're going through a time of infertility or a time when your desire is to be a mother and it is just not seeming like it's ever going to work out, I want you to know that my prayers are with you. And I hope that you will choose to trust God and know that He is with you through every challenge that you are going to be facing. So now you know how I gained 100 pounds. And I hope in some way that it is encouraging to you to know that you're not alone, and to maybe take the time to reflect on how you got to where you are now and where you want to go next. I will see y'all in my next video. Bye.